Welcome, everybody, to the Single Dad Project podcast. Today is November. I just wrote this shit down and I'm forgetting already. November 4th, Tuesday, November 4th. It's a brand new month, brand new project month. This month is the financial project. Today, I'm wearing the Illinois cheerleader sweatshirt in honor of our Father's Dad's weekend that we had this past weekend. Had a lot of fun, lots of cool experiences with my daughter and the rest of the kids and the dads. So it was a nice time. So I wanted to wear that. I wanted to wear this t-shirt or the hoodie for today because it's Single Dad Project and it was Dad's weekend. And with all the stuff that was going on this weekend, going into this month of November being the financial month, I'm like, all right, here's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to paying for shit. And all the stuff that us, I mean, not only just single dads in general have to pay for. So I wanted to start this show with a question. And it goes back to when we started the show way back in April, the podcast way back in April, asking, like, who are you as a dad, as a single dad? That's not the question I want to start with, but going all the way back, it's the way I look at things is starting off with asking a simple question and then letting either the answers that you know or the answers that are coming to you kind of dictate the path for you as you move forward. And the question I have today is with the financial project is, what is money? Most people might laugh at that question and just be like, well, that's a stupid question. You know, money is this, money is that. And if you go down the rabbit hole, there are a lot of definitions for money. I was talking to my daughter a few weeks back before she actually went off to college, and I pulled out my wallet. That shoulder's tweaking today. Took out my wallet, took out cash, and I said to her, you know, back when I was your age, when I was 18, this was money to me, just cash. And over the years, credit cards became money. And now this is money, the phone. And so I was trying to illustrate to her that the way we view money over the years, and it's just been a short span of like 30 or so years, the way we view money has changed. And so I start with that question, what is money? As a single dad, money to you might be your paycheck that you get every 2 weeks or every week or whatever. So to ask this question as a start, what is money, to me is a smart question to ask. Because depending on where your answers start on that path is basically where it's going to lead you as you move forward. So for me, going way back to, like I said, when I was talking to my daughter, my answer for money was the cash I had in my pocket. And as the years went on and I had questions about, you know, over the years, I was a W-2 employee before I knew what that meant. So paycheck to paycheck. And as I got older, I had friends that were getting salary, not working hourly. And they're like, you gotta work your way up to salary. Salary's better, this and this and that. You make more money, blah, blah, blah. So there's always these there's always these thoughts and these beliefs and processes around what money is to different people. So for me in the financial project, you almost can't start, and even, so I'm going to preface this, and even the way I answer it puts me in a box. It's kind of like the Tao is the thing that can't be named or whatever, however it starts out like that. It's the thing that can't be defined. As soon as you define it, then you put it into a box. And money in a way is like that. Some people view money as spiritual. Some people view money as just like a medium of exchange. Some people consider money the way it's considered in the Constitution. It's just gold and silver. Some people, at least nowadays, the younger people are viewing money as cryptocurrency. So you have to start with that question: what is money to you? And the reason why I want to start there is, as a single dad, how you answer that question is going to lead you down a path. Doesn't mean that you stay on that path, as long as you keep asking questions along the way. So, like I said, when I started out, not as a single dad, but just my younger years, to me, money was just cash, whatever I had in my pocket. And then it became whatever was on that paycheck, the numbers that were on that paycheck, that was money, or what was in the bank account, that was money. And as I got older and I started meeting people that were making 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, and the definition of money coming from those guys was way different than my definition of money. So to those guys in the higher wealth brackets, money was real estate, money was stocks, money was bonds, money was Forex, and all this kind of stuff that just, unless you're in the financial world, it doesn't register. So starting with that question, what is money to you as a single dad, I think is an important question to ask, so that you know your starting point. It's like you're looking at a map, and if you live in New York, you're like, okay, I know where I'm at. Where do I want to go in this country on this map? And in the map of money, you got to also, that's the next question you got to ask yourself, is where do I want to go with this? Just like with the question that I had as a trainer, when people would come in and say, hey, I need to work out, I need a trainer. It's like, great, what's your goal? 99% of the time, the one number that always came out of somebody's mouth was either I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to lose 25 pounds. All the time. That was the answer I got. And then so my second question to those people was like, okay, why? Why do you want to lose 20 pounds? Why do you want to lose 25 pounds? So a few years back, a friend of mine, financial planner, we were having a conversation, and he basically said the same thing to me in the realm of money. He said, when I talk to people, he's like, when I talk to my clients and I ask them, how much money do you want to make? They always say $1 million. That's like the set answer. And he always used to say, like, I'll ask him, like, why do you want $1 million? Why do you want to be a millionaire? Like, what's the why and whatever behind it? And most people just throw out that number just because that's the number to throw out. They don't have an understanding of what that number means. And sometimes people will say, well, I want to be a millionaire because I want to be happy and I need to pay my bills, and my bills don't make me happy, and yada, yada, yada. And so he was like, well, you don't need to be a millionaire to pay your bills and be happy. And having that conversation with him opened up my eyes. Now I watch and I listen to a lot of different voices out there. And what I mean by voices is individuals that talk about training, that talk about nutrition, that talk about working out, that talk about spirituality, that talk about the Bible, that talk about politics, that talk about money. And in the realm of money, I listen to the guys that are day traders. I listen to the guys that run the Forex thing, that do crypto, that are into gold and silver and real estate. So I kind of want to preface some of the things that I say, because I know my answers are going to, if somebody watches this, they're going to be like, well, that's a dumb statement, blah, 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 because of this. So I want to preface it, and I know the answers that are out there. I'm just giving you my perspective. So my friend was saying, relating the story to me about talking to clients, and the clients are always saying, I want to be a millionaire. And he's like, well, what does that mean? And when he broke it down to them, he would say, you don't need to be a millionaire to be happy. And there's voices out there that say you need to have $1 million just to get by in today's society. So I get where those voices come from. But there are also voices out there that basically say, if you're making 70 grand a year and you don't have problems and things are kosher in your life, then And usually what people find if they do a study and like do a little bit of research is they'll find that the people that aren't making the seven figures are making 6 or 5 per year, but they don't drown themselves in drama. They're usually pretty happy. And it's got nothing to do with the amount of money that they're making or the amount of money that's in their bank account. So that's why I asked this question. What is money to you? Where are you on that map of money? What's your starting point? And where do you want to go with it? So on this podcast, I've talked about the choices that I've made in the past, in the very recent past, in the last 3-4 years, with my daughter going off to high school and me not seeing her every other weekend because she had competitions and she was just like, Dad, I don't want to, take the time to get clothes and go back and forth between your house and Mom's house and whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm fine with that. So I adjusted my schedule so I could see my daughter more. And that schedule to me meant, and it could have been anything, I understand that, but I happened to make the choice that I was going to work overnights and take my days whenever I had the schedule with her to pick her up from school, take her to practices, things like that. And I've also mentioned on this podcast that working overnights in that warehouse was a $20 an hour job. Driving forklifts, pulling freight in and out of trailers. At my age, in my late 40s, that's not a millionaire lifestyle. That's not a 6-figure lifestyle. That's not a lifestyle that's going to get you much. It's more of a young man's job, in the sense that when you're younger, you don't have a lot of responsibilities as you do as a dad or a married dad or whatever. But that's the choice I made. To me, it was more important to be there for my daughter, to be with my daughter, than it was to make money. So when I asked myself that question 4-ish years ago, I was like, I don't care about the money. I want to be there for my kid. I want to spend time with my kid in these years when she's a teenager and growing up to be a young woman and eventually going off to college and starting her own path. I wanted to be there for that. The money didn't matter to me. And I struggled. But what I believe is that as a single dad, whatever your choice is, whether it's you're going to work out or you're going to sit on the couch or you're going to read scripture or go down the path of atheism, like to me, none of that shit matters, bro. That's like, I'm one of these people that's like, good for you. If that's the path that you're on and that's the path that you choose, awesome. Run with it. So I don't sit here and complain about working although I complained a lot when I was in the warehouse. That's because there's some bullshit that goes on in that job, but I didn't complain about my choice. I made the choice and I was good with it. And I knew that there was an end point to that choice. As soon as my daughter went to college, I was done with the warehouse and then I start something new. So my map has never been, I want to be a millionaire. I've never said that to myself. And part of the reason is because when I was younger, for those of you that are close to my age, you remember the show, The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And if you've never seen the show, you've probably heard it in a song here or there over the years. But to me, like watching Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous is like, yeah, nice house. Sometimes I'd see those old cars, those old Rolls Royce cars, and I'm like, it's not my style of car. And the suits, the 3-piece suits, that was never me. So when I was growing up, my view of people that had money wasn't appealing. Not because I like the trendy thing to say is like, rich people are assholes. I didn't have that opinion. To me, it was like, picking Coke over Pepsi. It's like, I don't like the taste of Pepsi. So why would I buy it? Why would I drink it? And to me, that's what that lifestyle looked like to me, that was portrayed in shows like lifestyles of the rich and famous. So I never wanted to be a millionaire because I'm like, yeah, the houses are nice, but the cars look like shit. I don't like wearing suits anyway, so I don't want to live that lifestyle. That's what was in my mind. And as I got older, the the people, and especially through the internet, the people that make that kind of money you started seeing a different style of what was portrayed in that old show from the 80s, and it was millionaires and now billionaires with the likes of like your Elons and your Zuckerbergs and stuff like that walking around in t-shirt and jeans. So the look is different. And but I'm writing on what was going on in my mind when I was younger. So to me, the biggest thing was always like, I just want to be happy. I don't know what that really looks like. I don't know what that really means. I don't want bullshit in my life. And with the topic of money, it always seems like if you don't have a good grasp on it, it's the bullshit that does show up in your life is more of a challenge to deal with. Versus if you got the means, you have the resources, you have the money, you can kind of deal with the bullshit a little bit better. And those are the things that I've heard over the years from the people the voices that I've seen online or on the radio or on TV, and also the voices of the people that I know that make that kind of money. They always say it's like, yeah, money's not going to make you happy. That's true, but it does help with the bullshit that you deal with. It's a lot easier. Like if you got a tire problem on your car when you have money to deal with it versus to deal with that tire problem and you don't have money. So that was always the response I got back from the people that I know personally and the people that I was seeing out there in life. So going back to the map and saying, okay, where do I want to be or where do I want to go with this money map? Over the years, asking that question, my answer has always been, I want to understand this money thing better so that I can teach my daughter about the things that I didn't know about when it comes to money. And we're going back 15 years ago now, almost 16 years ago. I met a bunch of real estate investors, and I was shooting video at the time. So they're like hiring me to shoot their remodels or the fix and flips that they were doing. And one of them, we were having a conversation, and he handed me a book. He's like, you got to read this book. And I can't remember if we were talking about money, real estate, whatever, but he's like, read this book. It's like my gift to you. And the book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which I've talked about on this show before. And I most likely went through that book in one night, maybe two. And it opened up my eyes and the world of money in a way that I never, ever saw it before. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about in today's show, with it being the first day of the financial project month, is talking about what was in that book that opened my eyes. One of them was just Robert talks about how the education system isn't set up to teach us about money. Like when you're young in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and if you're a dad and your kids are this age, you probably are going through that kind of homework where they're learning about pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, that kind of shit, dollars, fives, tens, 20s, that kind of stuff, and trying to memorize what each of those pieces of the physical, what we think of as physical money, like what it represents, like all those things that kids learn. But once you learn the money, the education system doesn't keep advancing with you as you age. So you're in eighth grade, you're a freshman in high school, even in college, unless you're taking the financial courses, they're not teaching you about credit, credit cards, real estate, like all these other forms of money that I talked about earlier, the stock market, things like that. So that was the one thing that I was like, man, Kiyosaki's totally right. And even to this day, I read that book 16 years ago. They haven't, my daughter was going through classes in high school. They didn't have any financial classes. So it was true back then. It was true in Kiyosaki's time back in the 60s and 70s, or whenever he was in school at that time, all the way up to now. So that was the one thing. We're not going to learn this from our formal education system. You got to go out and find it. And even PJ and I were having a talk the other day, a couple of weeks back, and I was telling him, I said, one of the greatest things that has happened in our society, good and bad, but you could take a percentage of how you see it. I think it's more good than bad, but having all this information on the internet, there's people that are out there talking about these topics. If you want to go learn about Forex, you can go find your YouTube videos, find your TikTok videos. You got to do some discernment to find the people that are actually teaching this stuff and not just trying to ride you to pull money out of your own fucking pocket, but you can go out there and learn versus, not even 20 years ago, we had the internet, but not the information that we have now. So you still had to go out and find it. So my point is, it's a lot easier to find all this information now than it was back then. And especially in like Kiyosaki's time, good luck trying to find a good, solid book on investing your money. Whereas now you can just tell YouTube or Google or your Chat GPT, like, hey, I want to learn about day trading. Tell me about the Coca-Cola stock. I want to tell me which stocks pay dividends at 2%. All that information is at our fingertips now, where back then, like I said, not even 20 years ago, that was a little bit harder to find. So on the map of money for me, when the Rich Dad Poor Dad book fell into my lap or was given to me by this real estate investor friend that I had, it opened up a lot of doors, because my question was, where do I want to go with this money map? I want to understand it better. And Rich Dad Poor Dad helped me understand money better. And the thing that I wanted to talk about, I was actually, for the last couple of weeks, this was on my mind. One of the things I wanted to talk about was Robert Kiyosaki highlights I'm pretty sure they call it a financial sheet or a balance sheet. I forget the name right now. But he talks about what's on that financial sheet and the breakdown. And very, very simple. He talks about income and expenses, assets and liabilities, which are things that never, ever, ever crossed my mind before reading that book. So for me, income was like, okay, it's my paycheck. And because that's the world I was living in, that was my education level with money. That's what I knew. Income is what I get paid on that paycheck. And my expenses are all the bills, everything that goes out. And what I want to talk about here in this first week of the financial project is to invite you as a single dad, because I know there are single dads out there that are like me back then. You guys don't have a foundation of what it means to have income and expenses and in this game we call finances. And at a deeper level, we don't understand what assets and liabilities really means in this world of finances. So that's my invitation to you, whoever's watching the show, is read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It kind of will enlighten you into some of that stuff. But now, because the internet and all this wealth of information is out there, you can do your own research on what it means to have income, expenses, assets, and liabilities the way Robert Kiyosaki's talking about it, but the way other financial professionals, entrepreneurs talk about it. Having these conversations with my daughter before she was going off to school was to say, like, giving you my understanding of what this means. As a single dad, like I said, not making a whole shit ton of money, trying to read and learn and discern what's out there. Since the day we were born, we've had expenses. It's not you have expenses now that you have a paycheck, or you have expenses when that cell phone bill comes in. It's like, nope. If you really think about it, from the day you were born, you came into this world with expenses. It's funny, like in the religious circles, are like, you were born with sin, blah, 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 blah. It's like, fuck that conversation. I came into this world with expenses. Like, talk to me about that. Because this world runs on finances. It runs on money. And that's the one thing that they don't teach us. You may have parents that taught you about religion, this and this and that, throwing a football, riding your bike, fixing a car. Hardly anybody got taught, like, unless you're at that elite level of wealth, hardly anybody got taught about money. And so my explanation here for you is to say, like, from the day you were born, you came in with expenses. You weren't paying for them. Your parents were paying for them, but diapers were expenses. The clothes that you got put on you were an expense to somebody. The food that you ate was an expense to somebody. So you came in with expenses. You didn't come in paying for those expenses, but that was a part of the process. That was a part of life. The income, the way I see it, when you were born, you also had income, but it wasn't in the form of money as we see it. It was in the form of love and spirituality and caring. So people cared for you in that way. They took care of you. And if you want to look at the assets and liabilities side, like, as if you listen to any kind of financial planner, any kind of economist out there, they'll tell you that kids financially are a liability to you. And it sounds harsh. Like, if you're like black and white about it, it makes sense. But if you got a heart, it's like, what? My kids aren't a liability, they're an asset. No, like, they cost you money. That's a liability. And unless you learn those things, then it won't make sense. And then it sounds harsh. It's not black and white. But sometimes in the world of finances and money, things have to be black and white. You have to look at it that way. And so as you get older, maybe you have a part-time job now, or if you did chores and your parents gave you money, there's that money goes into your income column. And your expenses are now, it's still the shirt on your back. It's still the food that you eat. It's probably not diapers anymore. But now, if you're old enough, I remember me and my friends used to hoard quarters to go play arcade games at the pizza joint. And that was an expense. So throughout your life, if you alter the lens of what you're looking through just for a moment and say, okay, what was the income as I was growing up? What was coming in? What were the expenses? What was going out? And as you got older, things formulated into how the world wants you to operate. And like I said, for me, it was always about having a job. So my income column was my paycheck every week, depending on the job, or every 2 weeks, depending on the job. And my expenses, the way I saw it, I didn't understand it at the time, was I just thought, well, my expenses are my bills. I have a cable bill, that's the expense. What I didn't realize, and this is one of the things I wanted to also talk about today, is, okay, I got some time. One of the expenses that we don't realize, unless you open your eyes, unless you hear the right voices out there talking about this. There's a gentleman out there by the name of Brian Beane who was a mentor to me for a little bit. I became a knucklehead and just kind of like stopped listening to him for a while. But when I was listening to him, he was um, very educational in how he talked about money. And one of the things that he broke down was talking about how there's two expenses that we have, and these aren't his words necessarily, but just using Brian as an example. He said we got two expenses that we have. One of them you don't even know about, and that expense is inflation. So it's also an expense that you can't do anything about. But I want to start there because it's a big one. And so for guys like me that grew up with just like, hey, get a job, you pay your bills, you buy your car, you have a house or you rent or whatever. The one thing that was outpacing us, and you see this if you open your eyes. If you don't open your eyes, you're just basically a dummy. And I'm not saying that in the wrong way. It's just like you're just not paying attention. Inflation outpaces us. If you just have a normal everyday job, and let's say you're lucky enough to get whatever 20 cents, 50 cents a year on your pay, um, if you break down the percentages, that percent might be 1%, might be 0.5%, might be 2% if you're lucky on your paycheck. But historically, what they say, I don't really believe what they say a whole lot, but if you just follow the line, what they say historically is inflation increases 4% per year, roughly. So if you're not making an extra 4% per year, you're always on the decline. You're losing. And that's an expense you don't even know about. And so what does this look like in the real world? Well, we've experienced it in the last few years. Inflation looks like this. You go to the gas station, it's 2019, you're paying maybe $1.70 for gas. Here we are 4 or 5 years later, now you're paying $3, and I think the last time I went to the gas station was $3.60. That's inflation. That's an expense that you and I have no control over. But it's increasing every year. And unless you have a job or a source of income that increases either with the rate of inflation, because that'll at least balance you out, or outpaces the rate of inflation, then you're never going to make the kind of money that you want to make if you're looking at that money map and saying, where do I want to go? So for me, I never said like I want to be a millionaire, I want to have $600,000 in my bank account. Like I never said those things. What I always said was I want to understand this money thing. I don't get it. And one of the things that I didn't get was this inflation thing until I started listening to people like Brian Beane, who broke it down in layman's terms. Like here's what it is. And it's not something that you can do anything about. Unfortunately, it's all government, corporate, the world. Like basically, in a nutshell, if you want to know what inflation is we have a printing machine in this country, for lack of a better term. And the more money that we print, the more it devalues what you have in your pocket. So if you have $1 today, we're printing money out the wazoo. Tomorrow, that dollar is 80 cents. You still have $1 in your pocket, but value-wise, it's only 80 cents. So that's one of those things that especially on the show, Single Dad, I wanted to talk about a big concept like that, like inflation, not to make it muddy or whatever, but to bring light to it so you have an understanding in that if you're just regular 9 to 5, you're not going to outrun this monster. You just can't. You can't. And so, like I said earlier, there's voices out there that say, no, unless you have $1 million, you're not going to be doing fine in this country. And you're not going to be happy. And so that's where those voices come from, because they understand this three-headed monster known as inflation, that nobody's going to outpace it unless you're actually doing things to outpace it. financially. So you still, on the other side, the voices that say, yeah, you can make 60,000 a year, 70,000 a year and be happy. And that's true. But you got to realize there's this expense out there that's always going to be chipping away at the value of your money. And there's nothing you can do about it, about the inflation. You can go find other ways to make more money. And that's another topic. But I just wanted to shed light on this one thing. It's like, for the longest time, I'd be like, what the fuck? Why can't I afford these jeans that like 5 years ago were like, $10. Now they're 25. Like, what the fuck? That's inflation. I didn't understand it. It made no sense to me. But the more you dig into inflation, the more you understand it's just on a higher level than you and me. They're debasing the value of your currency, the money that you have in your pocket. So that was the one thing. The second thing, your second expense that at least I wasn't thinking about was taxes. I see them. I don't like them, but it never registered in my head like this is part of an expense. And on some level you can control how many taxes you pay out the door. But it's one of those things you got to educate yourself on it. So in my younger years, I'd have my paycheck. I'd see, if I made $800 on a paycheck and I'm only bringing home 600 and change. So where's that 200, 180 going? And it's, it doesn't tell you much. It just says FICA. And for us here doing the podcast, Illinois, state taxes, and then you get the local. Sometimes it would tell you in the paycheck, the local. It's like, who the fuck are these people that are taking this money out of my pocket before I even get a chance to touch it? And then if you open your eyes a little bit more, which over the years I started doing, I'd collect the receipts. Like I remember talking to a few friends that are like, why do you need receipts? Like that's the digital age. You don't need receipts. Like, fuck that. I want to see what's coming out of this bill here. And over the years, I'd start looking at, okay, I'm going to whatever, the convenience store to buy a Gatorade. One Gatorade, I'm looking at the price, and then I'm looking at what is that tax that's coming out. And over the years, that tax has gone up too in this state. And so one of the things that I hear out there in the conversation or the topic of taxes is people will say, yeah, you get taxed 20, 25%, 30%, 35% on your income, your paycheck, whatever. And then you're getting taxed 8%, 9%, 9.25% when you go out to dinner or you buy concert tickets or whatever. So you're getting, and when you go buy a car, so you're getting these little percentages of taxes. And I listen to these people. I'm like, I understand the conversation, but be real. Like, we're getting taxed 100%. There isn't one thing out there that is commercially based where you don't get taxed. The only time I've never gotten taxed on something is when I go help a buddy move out of his apartment into a new apartment. He wants to throw me like $50 for helping him move. There's no tax on that except for inflation. So we're taxed 100% all the time. It could be 5% here, it could be 20% there, but it's 100% all the time. So how do we adjust for that? How do we defeat that? There's different ways to do it. One, like as an example, I live in Illinois. We're shooting this podcast from Illinois. I could not easily, but we're just talking hypothetical, right? Theories and stuff. I could easily move to a state that doesn't have the crazy taxes that this state has. That's a simple move. Indiana's just across the border, and Indiana's taxes are way lower than Illinois'. So that's a way to get some value back on my dollar. The difficult part is if I'm landlocked into a job, I can't just take unless I have some kind of career where I can go look for a similar job in Indiana and say, okay, I'm going to go do this in Indiana for the same amount of money that I'm getting over here in Illinois. But now in Indiana, I'm paying less taxes, so the value of my money goes up. That's one way to do it. Not very super practical, but a lot of people in this state have done it. If you read the news articles over the years, there's been a huge exodus out of Illinois because of the taxes. It's not so much because people don't like the weather here or their neighbors. It always comes down to economics. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, and this is something that I heard from a gentleman who I actually met in person back in 2010. He's a CPA and a lawyer, a tax lawyer. And I remember watching one of his podcasts, and he was talking about how to save on taxes. And he was saying, if you're a W-2 employee, and like, again, before I started listening to him, I didn't know what that meant. Like, what does it mean to be a W-2 employee? Like, is that the same as 9 to 5? Like, so if you're watching this and you don't know what that means, it's basically the form when you go get a job, the form W-2 is a tax form. And that's the category that when you talk to CPAs, that's a category that you're in unless you're something else. If you're a 1099, that's a tax form. You're basically, most people that are 1099 are self-employed or contractors, subcontractors, Uber drivers, things like that. So anyway, so he's talking about how to save on your taxes. And he was basically saying that if you want to come to him as a CPA and get like all kinds of deductions, because you're hearing about people getting deductions, he's like, I cannot do anything for you as a W-2 employee. You have no options. And mind you, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying. These are my words, not his. But he's basically saying you don't have any options in the tax code as a W-2 employee. Now, if you go out and get a business, and he's a funny guy, so he said jokingly, but I mean it's kind of not jokes, but he said even if you have a lemonade stand, he goes, now we can start deducting. You had to go out and buy the cups, and had to go out and buy the lemonade and the pitcher and your table. Now we can start deducting because you have a business. So as an example, it's a very, very light example. So if I say something wrong, I apologize, but I'm trying to illustrate what he's basically saying. So if in your W-2 job, you owe $1,000 in taxes because that's what the government, whatever, took out, and they say that's what you owe or whatever. If you have a lemonade stand and you spent $250, not $250, but a portion of the money that you spent building up your lemonade stand and having profits and losses and things like that, then he can take a portion of that against the taxes against the $1,000. So if the deductions come out to be $250, he can take off $250 from that $1,000, and now you're paying less in taxes. If you have a business, a side hustle, a gig that you're doing, like an Uber or something like that, a lemonade stand. So that's one way to do it. Or I should say another way to do it. So the thing that I wanted to go over in this first financial episode, and I'm hoping, I keep sending out feelers for friends of mine that are CPAs, financial planners, that hopefully want to come and talk about these subjects on the show, because they're way smarter about it than I am. But I'm hoping to get some of those folks on the show with me to talk about this stuff. But the first two that were on my mind as far as like thinking about what's going out, the expenses, was this topic of inflation. Go look it up. It's almost impossible to beat. And this topic of taxes. And um, how to lessen the tax load on yourself. There's a deeper rabbit hole that you can go down where you can uh, go through all these forms and find the individuals out there that say, "Hey, you don't even have to pay taxes." That's a different. That's a bigger topic that I started learning about over the last 10 years, but I don't have the grasp on it because it's a web. And so as an example, I started with the question, what is, as a single dad watching the show, what is money, right? In my younger years, to me, money was the cash in my pocket. Um, those are what they call promissory notes. It's a way deeper rabbit hole. But just as to give you an example, that paper is not defined as money. What is defined as money, as what's written in the Constitution, is gold and silver. That's defined as money. Anything else is not defined as money. They're defined as promissory notes or instruments of negotiation, things like that. So it's a bigger rabbit hole. What I basically wanted to talk and touch on was the surface level stuff, the things that we may not understand, but we can grasp our fingertips around. So those are the two things that I brought up that Brian Beane used to talk about when I was watching him, but he had two other ones that he talked about. And I'll get to those next week because I think what this man teaches is very profound. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch base on next week is also Kiyosaki's other book, The Cash Flow Quadrant. So today we talked about the income and expenses, just to give you like a little primer on what that means, because like I said, I didn't know what it meant back then. Next week I'll talk about a little bit more about assets and liabilities, because that was a big topic that I had no clue on until I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But in the cash flow quadrant, one of the things that Kiyosaki points out is the difference between an employee, somebody that's self-employed, a business owner, and an investor. And according to Kiyosaki's philosophy, what you want to do is get to the investor box as fast as you can, because in that box, then you're not working for money. Money's working for you. As an investor, your money's doing all the work. It's doing all the labor. And so we'll talk about those things next week. PJ, you got any input? Any questions? Nothing? Okay, so we're in about 52-ish minutes here. I just want to make sure I'm always trying to wrap these up within an hour or at least 45 minutes. If you get anything out of this information, let us know in the comments. I know these things are coming out late. That's all my fault. One of the things I was telling John the other day, I was talking to him on the phone and I told him, he's like, "You're still doing shows?" I'm like, "We're recording every week. I'm just not getting them out there on time." So I said to him, I said, if this keeps on going, at least next year in January, I'll have a stack of shows that we can just pump out. So whenever you're watching this, if you have comments, let us know what you think. My focus is always on single dads, how we can help each other out. These are the things that I've learned over the years. Some from dads who are married and still married and have a great family and everything. Some of the dads are single and raised kids and weren't struggling doing it. Brian is an example of that. That's why I'd like to bring him on if he's available, because he was a single dad, raised his kid, makes good money, bought nice cars. I've seen some of his cars in person. Got into land recently, the last few years, and just doing great things, and again, doing it all as a single dad, but whole another level of financial mindset than where I'm at. But those are the people like Brian that I try to learn from and try to absorb some of the education that they're putting out there for free, and at least get an understanding of what is this world that we're living in, and by world I mean this world of finance, and trying to get an understanding of that. So with that, my name is Henry. PJ's over to my right. Thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you in the next one.